Well, good evening, everyone. We're so grateful that everybody was able to jump on with us tonight. We're excited for the preview, the preview of Meta, this new product that we're coming out with this next week, and we've been, definitely getting ready for that. Hopefully, each of you have, been doing your part in sharing that. But we wanted to really spend tonight diving deep into the science. And so for that, we have invited Dr. Mark Bartlett, who is one of our chief scientists at Pharmanex. And he's got his PhD in immunology and a long history, not only with our company, but National Cancer Institute, amongst a number of other organizations and companies along the way. He does hail from Australia, which makes it that much better to even listen to than myself. But with that, we do want to turn this time over. We appreciate Mark and all of your time and your willingness to jump on and join us this evening. And we'll turn it over to you.
Thanks. It's great to be here. Really appreciate it. I guess you probably all know Scott. Some of you may know me. Hopefully you know the company a little bit. But I want to sort of start with a little bit of a story. So about the turn of the century, around the year 2000, we were having a scientific advisory board meeting. So we had Joe Chang, we had also another senior scientist there called Michael Chang, no relation, and SAB members and the PhDs that we had in the company. And we were learning about something called metabolic syndrome or syndrome X. And basically, I'll talk a little bit more about that. But the upshot was, wow, wouldn't it be great if we had some sort of nutritional strategy for that? And fast forward 20 years or so, here we are. And I just want to sort of share with you a little bit of that journey. Some of these things, one thing that we pride ourselves on, what I love about Nu Skin is that we, there are a lot of things that everyone has in the area of nutrition, and they're super important. I'll talk a little bit later about why multivitamins are important, right? A good one or a mediocre one, but something is really important. A bone formula is important if you need it, or a cartilage formula, or an eye formula. But there are some things that are really unique, and we're going to talk about something today that is kind of unique and that the world really needs. So again, this is the kind of, nothing has changed. This is fairly recent data, 2019. So it's almost 20 years after this sort of issue is identified. And we're learning that really the top part is marketing. I want you to look at sort of the bottom part here. A study from 2019 in a metabolic syndrome journal. Only 1 in 8 people in the USA is considered metabolically healthy. And we've done the research for other countries as well. It's fairly similar. That might surprise you. And about this time, people are going to ask, what the devil are you talking about? What's metabolic health? And I know what some of you are thinking. Some of you are thinking it's all about weight loss, dude. Like, if you're skinny, it means probably you've got a fast metabolism. And if you've got a slow metabolism, you probably need something to speed it up, right? Take some green tea or something, right? But that's not what we're talking about. So metabolism is really the sum of all of the biochemical reactions that are going on in your body. I think I've got a picture of it here. Here's a metabolic chart, right? So this is some of the reactions that are going on. So, you see some, fructose being converted to sucrose. How does that happen in the body? Well, it's a necessary reaction, and it's catalyzed by an enzyme. And basically, the reaction would never happen because the sort of barrier to entry of that reaction is too high. So it wouldn't happen without an enzyme. Now, look at this. This is just like, an eighth of the chart. There are tens of thousands of chemical reactions that are going on in your body. That is what metabolism is. Some of it's enzymes that are breaking down food. Some of it's enzymes that are building things, building blocks for structural proteins in your body, like collagen, whatever it might be. Some of it is adding phosphate groups so that you've got ATP, so you've got a chemical storage form of energy. So I think you get the picture. Metabolism is all about these biochemical reactions that are in the body. And sort of metabolic health is indicated by all those kinds of things that you see when you go to the doctor. They prick your finger or they take some blood, and they come back later and tell you that your blood sugar is healthy or not, insulin sensitivity, blood pressure, cholesterol and triglycerides. So if you're really to break it down, they're looking at sort of three things, right? They're looking at your blood lipids, HDL, LDL, all of those things. They're looking at glucose control, whether or not your insulin's working, if you've got insulin sensitivity and things like that, so your blood sugar. And then they're also looking at oxidative stress. Those are the three big indicators that your metabolism isn't all right. And believe it or not, the stuff that you do at the doctor is just the tip of the iceberg. Scientists have discovered 1,000 different biomarkers that can tell you if you're healthy. So how do we get out of whack? Well, the answer really is our lifestyle. So, and I think you can probably relate to this, especially sort of the last decade or two, right? Streaming our favorite shows, staying up late. So lack of sleep, working long hours, stress. Let's go back to lack of sleep real quick. I mean, studies are showing that if you get less than 8 hours for more than a couple of days in a row, your blood sugar gets so out of whack that it's hard to differentiate you from a diabetic. So, poor diets, all of these things are contributing to poor metabolic health. And it's not just about being skinny. So in general, yes, when you think about it, the US, 2/3 of the population are either obese or overweight. When that happens, that does cause metabolic sort of issues, right? For instance, adipose tissue, your big gut, that is not just a passive storage form of energy, although it's good. You could probably run a couple of marathons on the energy stored in there, but it's also, that adipose tissue is a little bit unhealthy, and it's kicking out inflammatory mediators. It's kicking out hormones and things that kind of get your metabolism out of whack. But still, even a recent study showed, this is a 2019 study again, that 2/3 of normal weight participants still don't have optimal metabolic health. So it's probably more than just your weight. It's still your inactivity, your lack of sleep, your stress, all of those things. So hopefully you're getting a picture there that is not just about good, fast, bad, slow, right? It's everything. I'm going to skip this slide and just share with you that metabolic health then is a spectrum. So poor lifestyle choices, like we mentioned, sedentary, high fat, poor diet, sleep deprivation, all of these things, high stress, even smoking, they lead to, the poor end of the metabolic health spectrum. And those people that have regular exercise, an active lifestyle, healthy diet, adequate sleep, and the rest, they're probably going to be on the more healthy side. And again, you look at that statistic and we need some help. And this is, I guess, where the story comes in. So several years ago, we became really interested in anthocyanins. These are a vibrant purple colored, sometimes red, that we find in some cereals, some berries, some vegetables. Some of them getting less common these days. You don't very often see a purple carrot. But even black rice or black corn, these contain anthocyanins. They're a very special type of a molecule. And we became very interested in them because we learned some things about cognitive health as a result of anthocyanin intake. We learned some things about gastrointestinal barrier function, or the good and the friendly bacteria in the GI are impacted by them. So we thought, let's study this. Thankfully, I work for a company that says, yeah, you can study that. I don't know what the return on investment is going to be, but I trust you, Mark. Let's go study some of these things. And so we did. Just sort of a background here, how much are people consuming? So in Australia, my countrymen are not doing so well. They're sort of the worst on the chart here in milligrams per day. China is not doing too bad. And actually, they're increasing awareness of the importance of this phytochemical in the diet in China. And they've just sort of made an RDA, I guess, if you will, of anthocyanins in China. And they're saying that 85 milligrams a day minimum is best for your health. What we have discovered, sort of spoiler alert, is that a really good dose that will impact your health positively is around 200. But I'll tell you how we got there. So we started studying these anthocyanins, and we thought a really good place would be the GI. This is where all the new data are coming from. And if you want to look after your GI, you should have a healthy diet rich in fibers, soluble and insoluble fibers that feeds the bacteria in the GI. And when you feed the bacteria in the GI and they're healthy, they metabolize those fibers and things, and then they excrete short-chain fatty acids. So, these bacteria poop out basically these short-chain fatty acids, like butyrate is a good example of one. And these short chain fatty acids are actually the main energy source for the cells that line the GI tract. So these are gastrointestinal epithelial cells then get a good energy supply. They became fat and plump, and they have tight junctions between the cells. And this forms a really nice tight barrier for the GI. Now, you might ask, well, why is that barrier important? So think about your skin as a very similar barrier, although it has a few more layers of cells. Think of walking through a nasty sewer or something, right? Maybe you're down in the catacombs under Paris. All right. Yeah, it's pretty icky, but at least you can go home and shower. Now imagine that your feet have got some cuts in them. That's a totally different scenario, right? Now imagine your GI. You have so much bacteria and nastiness in there that actually studies have shown that it is the highest density bacteria habitat on planet Earth is right there in your colon. So you really your body needs to focus on those tight junctions between those cells, and they are dependent upon healthy bacteria that are metabolizing healthy foods so that the GI is healthy. A lot of companies have probiotics and prebiotics. We were just really interested in these anthocyanins as substrates for these bacteria that really are kind of like a superfood for them. And so here you see the study was successful. It was in nearly 50 healthy overweight or obese individuals. And we showed that at the end of the study, the healthy bacteria represented in green here expanded. So it changed and shifted the microbiota, and that was great. So we thought we had a really good gut product, and our marketers went to all of the regions and said, hey, we've got a really good gut product. And they said, well, how much is it going to cost? And I'll tell you right now, anthocyanins and extracts of anthocyanins are super expensive. So I kind of bombed. So I guess welcome to the world of research. We thought that we maybe had wasted our money. But whenever we do a study like this with humans, we also do safety data. And with safety data, we're doing what I mentioned before. You look at some of those metabolic biomarkers that indicate health, because you don't want whatever you're doing to your patient or to your subject to impact their health negatively. So we did things like, lipids and blood glucose and oxidative stress. And here's just one graph on the bottom that you see here. One of the markers of blood glucose is hemoglobin A1C. So it's a measure of glycation. It's non-enzymic process. In the presence of sugar that's out of control, if the sugar increases in your bloodstream, insulin's not working properly, then it glycates red blood cells. And that's bad, right? Glycation causes sort of pretty much premature aging and all of these things, from wrinkles in your skin to kidney function and microcirculation issues. So I looked at this and I said, this is huge. Let me see the rest of the panel. And as I looked at that panel, it was clear that these people who we thought were overweight and therefore usually have sort of bad biochemical markers, they all look really good. And I said, did these people lose weight? They all look skinny from the inside. And, our head, our director of research, Dr. Wood, said, let me check the data. Well, there was a little bit, but not statistically significant. But he said, but they must have. I mean, the whole team said they must have lost weight. Maybe we designed the study wrong, but look at these data. And I said, well, maybe we're onto something here, because I remember 20 years ago, we were talking about metabolic health. Maybe there's more to it. So then we went to the literature and we said, well, let's see what the effects, some of the biological effects of anthocyanins are, looking at these markers of biochemistry health. And so we looked in fatty acid tissue, fat tissue, and we see that, in the presence of anthocyanins, with an anthocyanin-rich diet, right, lots of these weird purple-colored foods, fatty acid oxidation was up. Typically, if you've got bad metabolism, it's kind of down. Insulin sensitivity, up. We go to the muscle. Here's another couple of examples. Glucose uptake was up. Carbohydrate metabolism, up. We went to the pancreas. Beta cell function, up. That's great. Blood lipids, down. That's also great. That's a sign of healthy metabolism. The liver, fat accumulation, down. Oxidative stress, down. So there's just 8 biomarkers here, and we thought, this is interesting. It's getting interesting. Let's look a little deeper. So I had the team look at hundreds of biomarkers, but this is, again, a subset. So you see here, I don't know how many are on this list, maybe 30. And for the liver, fat tissue or adipose tissue, skeletal muscle, pancreas. And what you see here on the right is if you have a metabolically healthy choice, then you're going to cause CPT1A to go up, and so on down the list. So these are folks that have healthy metabolism by all standards. And then we looked at those that didn't have a background of healthy metabolism. So their diet was poor, they were sedentary. And then those people that then converted to an anthocyanin-rich diet, you look at this heat map, and not everything lines up, but you can start to see a pattern here. Like anthocyanins are doing something really amazing to metabolic health. So I hope right now you're kind of getting excited, because I was getting excited when I started to see these data come together. So all that was left now was for us to do more of our own studies to sort of confirm this. And that's what we started to do. So where do we start? Well, we have to look at things in terms of plant chemistry. So anthocyanins isn't just one molecule. Actually, there's a family. So, let's narrow it down and find out which of the anthocyanins, which member of the family is most active. And then we did studies that looked at further protection of the GI tract, because I've already shared with you that's super important. It's like when your feet are cut and you're walking through the sewer, that's going to impact your metabolism. It's going to impact inflammatory markers and all sorts of things. So same with the GI, right? So looking at the GI tract, because we feel that that's where where it's happening. That's the mechanism. And these other things, modulation of inflammation and metabolic signals. So we studied these things. Let me share with you first, which anthocyanin. So in this purple triangle here, you can see 3. They probably look the same to you, but to a chemist, he'll look at it and go, well, one's got an extra hydroxy group in it, and so on. So they're slightly different. And we ranked the ones that were the best because, and actually sort of, I guess, again, spoiler alert, we found that cyanidin and delphinidin were the most impactful. And these are most rich in blackcurrant, bilberry, and black rice. Let me show you, for example, one of the studies that we did. This is a test tube study. Basically, it's a petri dish with healthy GI cells growing on them. And then you can really upset them with an inflammatory sort of pro-inflammatory molecule of some sort. And then we can measure the electrical permeability and see which ones are resisting the best in the presence of the different types of anthocyanins. So here on the left here, you kind of see I guess the insult to the cells, and you see that the permeability is really high. And then if you look, basically I've highlighted in purple and purple stripes the most effective anthocyanins in that in vitro study. So these other, these other ones weren't too bad, but definitely delphinidin and cyanidin were the most active. So the next thing is to study preclinical, which really means mouse studies. So this is a 14-week study in healthy mice, and we measured changes in intestinal permeability and also the gut bacteria. So here, again, it's more of this transport markers of intestinal permeability. And if you feed a really unhealthy diet to these mice, then you get, this black bar here, lots of permeability. So stuff is getting in. It's like having cuts in your feet. You don't want that. A normal diet or a normal diet with anthocyanins looked good, healthy. What if you fed these guys, high-fat diet, nasty kind of diet that sort of increases the permeability, and you also feed them at the same time anthocyanins? And you can see that it brings everything back to normal. So, huge impact in a living creature. This is endotoxins. So when there's bad permeability, then bad things are getting from the gut through the gastrointestinal barrier, because it's not very good, into the bloodstream and wreaking havoc with your metabolism. And you can see here that this nasty diet increased the entry of these endotoxins. And when you fed those same mice with anthocyanins at the same time, you saw a huge improvement, right? It went back to normal, basically, like the control. Down here, we see beneficial. You kind of got, in general, healthy bacteria and unhealthy bacteria. And so in general, the firmicutes are not so healthy. There are exceptions because there are different subspecies and stuff. And Bacteroidetes are the more healthy guys. So you see here in the control, there are about 20 times more of the firmicutes than the Bacteroidetes. And when you do the sort of the bad, unhealthy diet, it goes to about 40-1. So now you've got like a shift in the makeup of the healthy bacteria in the gut, and it's not so healthy. It's a shift towards unhealthy. Now look what happens when you give those mice a diet that's rich in anthocyanins. Really nice, right? You see this purple bar here. now you've got a really nice healthy ratio. It's only about 10 times more of the one than the other. So that was nice. There are also markers of alterations in those tight junctions that we know about. These proteins are occludin, zonulin, claudin, and we showed the same thing. Here, more is better, and you saw that the anthocyanins are really improving things. So this is great. Everything seems to be agreeing with the hypothesis that these anthocyanins are really good for the GI. And here is, now we're sort of talking more about metabolism, inflammatory markers, and blood glucose. So look here, this is GTT, glucose tolerance test, area under the curve is what that means. And we see that, in the presence of this diet, typically in a glucose tolerance, they give you about 75 milligrams of glucose, right? And it's bolus, and then they wait 2 hours and then measure sugar in your blood. And if you've got really good glucose control, then it's going to go back to zero really fast, because your body has to control that glucose. So too much glucose is toxic. It causes glycation, like we mentioned earlier. So the glucose binds to the proteins in your body, and it makes a sticky end. And that sticky end then binds to other proteins, and that's called cross-linking. And once that cross-linking happens, it does not unglue itself. So you probably, if you're as old as I am, you've probably got some wrinkles there. That's actually permanent cross-linking of some of the collagen that's in your skin. And it's very hard to remove. And the same thing happens in the body, in the vasculature and the microcirculation. So you want to prevent that. You want really good glucose control. And if your diet's bad, and as I mentioned before, if you're not sleeping enough and you've got bad lifestyle and you're sedentary, then you see more of glucose in the blood after an insult. And you can see that and this is a really tough test, by the way, but the anthocyanins are actually helping to bring it back down to normal levels. And here's ITT. It's just an intravenous test to do the same kind of thing. And you see again, wow, the anthocyanins have brought down that sort of glucose control back to normal levels. Here's some impact in the liver. So when you have really unhealthy diet, you end up with sort of more fat in the liver. So the center here, you can see a high-fat diet fed over a long period of time. You see all this fat that's building up in the liver. And here's a control mouse, so a typical healthy diet. And here's that same diet that's in the middle, but now you've got anthocyanins in the diet. And you see it's almost like the control. So that's, I think, a picture worth 1,000 words, I hope. Then here's the study that I already described. And this is a human study. So it's really nice to sort of go from the in vitro discovery now to preclinical and now clinical studies. Here's another human clinical study. This was done on healthy college kids, so in their 20s. And we wanted to see, well, how fast is the effect? And we gave these guys a diet that was like these Jimmy John's high-fat kind of hamburger things. And some of them could barely even eat it without being sick. It was a lot of calories all at once, and it was not very healthy. And you can see there's no vegetables in there, and they didn't get orange juice with it or any anthocyanins. So at least when they didn't, you saw with the placebo, plasma endotoxins were high. Glucose area under the curve, so glucose tolerance was high. Let's see if I can get that thing to go away. No, I can't. Here is inflammatory markers, and here is triglycerides. So you have here some of those three things that I was talking about, right? Blood glucose control, endotoxins and inflammatory markers in the top, and then fatty acids. And you can see a really nice improvement in all of those things. And that was just at one meal. So we're really excited about that result. And we're currently doing a more chronic study. So to summarize, we've done the discovery of the right subclasses and the dose, and looked at some of the mechanisms there. And I've described also the process, right? How, again, think of your GI. It has to be tight like a drum. It goes from sort of the upper intestines just below the stomach all the way to the colon. There's 30 or so feet of pipe there, which you think is in the inside, but it's actually the outside. Like there's a sewer in there, and you do not want any of that to get into your perfectly pristine bloodstream or tissue. And so that depends on those tight barrier functions. The modern lifestyle seems to wreak havoc with that. It then causes tight junction alterations. You might call it leaky. And it also causes microflora alterations. Actually, those microflora alterations, as I mentioned, are really important because healthy microflora will produce the foods, the short-chain fatty acids, to keep those epithelial cells healthy. If you want to know how big that with the exposure is, you have these endothelial cells, right? And they actually have villi on them. So each of these cells has like all of these little bumps on them that you can kind of see here. And those bumps also have bumps on them called microvilli, and that expands the surface area. So the typical human has a surface area of about 2 tennis courts in the GI, and all of it has to be kept tight like a drum, or you get this incursion of endotoxins and things like LPS that then can wreak havoc with your metabolism. So we really feel like this is how it's working, and these anthocyanins are just like this superfood for GI barrier function that then helps support your metabolic health. And I think that this is the last slide, but previously I showed you a slide. 215 milligrams of anthocyanins seems to be the magic number. It's a lot of anthocyanins, and it's the kind of level of anthocyanins that you get with a rich diet in berries and those things that have cyanidin and delphinidin, those anthocyanins. So we're super excited about this. I think we're in for some fun. I guess the question is, how do you tell the story? And I'd sort of just love to go around with each of you as you talk to your friends and tell them about it. but we'll figure it out. That's what you guys do the best, right? Basically, we have a superfood for the GI microflora that keeps the GI healthy. But the real story is your metabolism. The results are, improved metabolism. This is what everyone wants. We live in a world where, 1 in 8 are not metabolically healthy. And we need to change that paradigm. This is entirely unique. This is not your average sort of bone formula, eye formula that everyone has, even though ours are better. This is something that's so unique that the world will soon be copying it and realizing how important it is. So thanks, Scott. Thanks so much for letting me share this with you today.